r/NoSleep. The observatory I work at comes with a terrifying set of rules. My name's Darren, and if you're reading this, you need to promise me something. Never accept a job at an observatory with no history you can find online. I wish I'd known that before I signed the contract for Eclipse Ridge Observatory. I'm writing this from the break room, where the blinds are drawn tight, and I'm too scared to even glance at the monitor showing the telescope feeds. Let me explain. 2 weeks ago, I got a job as the night operator at this observatory tucked away in the mountains. The ad said it was a research facility for celestial phenomena, and I thought it would be perfect for me. I've always been fascinated by space, and the idea of spending quiet nights scanning the stars felt like a dream come true. The first night started like you'd expect. I met the supervisor, a gaunt man named Dr. Merrick, who spoke in a low, clinical tone, as if every word was carefully measured. He gave me a tour of the equipment, giant telescopes, a room full of monitors displaying live feeds from the skies, and a massive server room humming with power. Just as I was about to leave for the night, Merrick handed me a small booklet. It was old, the edges frayed, and the pages filled with neatly typed text. "These are the protocols," he said. "Follow them exactly. This is not negotiable." I glanced through it, my curiosity piqued. At first, I thought it was just operational guidelines for the equipment. But then I read the rules, and a cold knot of unease settled in my stomach. 1. Never look directly into the telescope between 3:03 a.m. and 3:13 a.m., no matter what you see. 2. If an alert flashes on monitor 7 but no corresponding star appears in the log, power down the monitor and do not react. 3. If you hear a knocking sound on the roof, stay inside and lock the doors. Do not investigate. 4. When processing star alignment data, ignore any patterns resembling faces. 5. If you hear static coming from the intercom, do not respond. Wait for it to stop on its own. 6. Under no circumstances should you attempt to observe Sector Theta. It sounded absurd, like something out of a horror novel. I almost laughed, but Merrick's expression made me stop. He looked at me with a seriousness that sent a shiver down my spine. "These rules aren't a joke," he said. "People who don't follow them don't last here." I nodded, pretending to take it seriously, but in the back of my mind, I was already dismissing it. How bad could it really be? The first few nights were uneventful. I followed the rules half-heartedly, mostly because I was still figuring out the equipment and didn't want to mess anything up. But nothing strange happened. That changed on night 4. The first rule I broke was number 3. It was a little past midnight, and I was working on recalibrating the telescope when I heard it, a soft, rhythmic knocking sound coming from the roof above me. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, more insistent, like someone, or something, was pounding to be let in. My first instinct was to check it out. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way to the ladder leading to the roof hatch. As I climbed, the knocking grew louder, sharper, almost frantic. When I reached the hatch, I hesitated. The memory of rule number 3 flashed through my mind, and my gut twisted with unease. Still, I pushed the hatch open. The cold night air hit me like a slap, and I shone my flashlight across the roof. Nothing. Just the endless expanse of sky above, the stars glittering like shards of glass. But the knocking hadn't stopped. It was coming from somewhere just out of sight, on the far side of the dome. I stepped out cautiously, my flashlight sweeping across the roof. That's when I saw it. A figure crouched at the edge of the roof, its back to me. It was humanoid, but wrong, its limbs too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. The skin was pale, almost translucent, and its movements were jerky, like a puppet being dragged along by invisible strings. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The figure turned slowly, and I caught a glimpse of its face, empty, featureless, with only a faint impression of eyes and a mouth, like a half-formed mask. It stared at me, its head tilting as if curious, and then it moved. It didn't walk, it glided, impossibly fast, across the roof toward me. I stumbled back, dropping the flashlight as I scrambled for the hatch. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't grip the ladder. I threw myself down into the observatory, slamming the hatch shut behind me. The knocking stopped. I sat there for hours, shaking, too terrified to move. When dawn finally broke, I told Merrick what had happened. He didn't look surprised. "You broke the rule," he said simply. The second rule I broke was number 2. It happened 3 nights later. Monitor 7 flashed an alert, a bright, pulsating red that drew my attention immediately. I checked the star logs, but there was nothing there, No corresponding data for the anomaly. I remembered the rule: power down the monitor and ignore it. But curiosity got the better of me. I zoomed in on the feed, trying to make sense of the glowing, shifting mass on the screen. At first, it looked like a cluster of stars, but as I adjusted the focus, I realized it wasn't. The points of light were moving, forming shapes, patterns, faces. They weren't human faces. They were grotesque, twisted, their features contorting in ways that defied logic. As I stared, the faces began to turn, one by one, as if they were looking at me. And then they smiled. The monitor went black. I couldn't sleep that day. The image of those faces stayed with me, burned into my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them staring back at me, grinning. The worst was when I broke rule number 6. Sector Theta was marked on the map as off-limits. I'd avoided it, mostly because there were plenty of other areas to observe, and I didn't want to push my luck. But one night, the telescope auto-aligned to that sector on its own. I should have powered it down. I should have followed the rule. But instead, I looked. What I saw, I can't even describe it. It wasn't space. It wasn't stars. It was something vast and alive, writhing in the darkness, its form constantly shifting. And then it noticed me. I don't know how I knew, but I felt it, a cold, consuming awareness that locked onto me, pulling me into its void. The telescope feed began to distort, and a low, guttural sound filled the observatory, vibrating through my bones. I blacked out. When I came to, Merrick was standing over me. His face was pale, his expression grim. "You shouldn't have looked," he said. Now I'm here, hiding in the break room, with something scraping at the door. My phone battery is almost dead, and I don't think I'm getting out of this alive. If you ever see a job posting for Eclipse Ridge Observatory, don't take it. And if you do, for the love of God, follow the rules. I can hear it now. Whatever it is, it's not just scratching at the door anymore, it's whispering. The sound is low, almost inaudible, but it worms its way into my ears, its cadence wrong, its words unrecognizable. It doesn't sound human. It doesn't sound like anything that should exist. I clutch my phone tighter, the screen's light flickering against the oppressive darkness of the break room. The whispers grow louder, like a chorus of broken voices overlapping, each pulling at a different part of my sanity. I squeeze my eyes shut, trying to block it out, but the sound doesn't stop. It's inside my head now, twisting and churning like a storm. I force myself to focus. I open the old booklet Merrick gave me, skimming the rules again as if they hold some kind of answer, some way to make this stop. But the words blur together, and my hands shake so badly I almost drop the booklet. That's when the power goes out. The observatory plunges into complete darkness. The sound of the servers humming, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, all of it is gone, replaced by an unbearable silence. For a moment, the only sound is my own ragged breathing. Then, the whispering stops. Something far worse replaces it. "Hello," guttural growl echoes through the break room. It's deep, primal, and it vibrates through my chest like a physical force. The air feels heavy, suffocating, as if the darkness itself is pressing against me. I feel it then. Something is inside the room with me. I don't see it, but I feel its presence, cold and oppressive. The growl grows louder, shifting into a horrible wet sound, like flesh being torn and rearranged. My stomach churns, and I have to clamp a hand over my mouth to keep from retching. I fumble for my flashlight, my trembling fingers barely managing to click it on. The narrow beam cuts through the darkness, illuminating the room. At first, there's nothing, just empty shelves and scattered tools. But then, the beam lands on the far corner, and my heart stops. A figure is standing there. It's tall, impossibly so, with limbs that bend at wrong angles. Its skin is pale and slick, like something pulled from deep, cold water. Its face, or what should be its face, is a blank canvas, smooth and featureless, except for 2 deep indentations where eyes should be. Those pits. They're empty, but they're looking at me. I can feel it. The thing takes a step forward, its movements jerky and unnatural. The flashlight flickers, the beam struggling to stay steady as the thing's shadow stretches unnaturally across the walls, reaching toward me. My breath catches, and I stumble backward, knocking over a chair in my panic. I don't know what to do. The rules. The rules. I try to think of which one applies here, but my mind is a fog of terror. My instincts scream at me to run, but my legs feel like lead. The thing takes another step, and its head tilts, as if studying me. Then, it does something I'll never forget. It opens its mouth. There's no jaw, no teeth, just a gaping void, dark and endless, and from that void comes a sound that freezes me to the core. It's not a growl, not a scream, it's a mimicry. My voice, distorted and wrong, calling out in a panicked plea, "Help me. Please, help me." It's mocking me. I don't think. I move. I lunge for the door, throwing it open and bolting into the hallway. The flashlight flickers madly, the beam slicing through the oppressive darkness as I run, my footsteps echoing off the cold, sterile walls. Behind me, I can hear it following. Its steps aren't loud, but they're deliberate, purposeful, and they're getting closer. I don't look back. I can't. If I see it again, I'm not sure I'll survive. I make it to the control room, slamming the door shut behind me and locking it. My chest heaves as I try to catch my breath, the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The monitors flicker to life on their own, the static-filled screens illuminating the room in a cold, unsteady glow. That's when I see it. Monitor 7 is on, the feed showing Sector Theta. I didn't turn it on. I know I didn't. The image on the screen isn't the sky, it's the observatory. The camera is pointed at the very room I am in, and in the corner of the screen, I see myself, huddled and terrified. But I'm not alone. The thing is there, standing in the shadows behind me. I whirl around, but the room is empty. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely think, let alone move. I turn back to the monitor, and the image changes. The feed zooms in, closer and closer to my face on the screen, until the camera shows only my eyes, wide, filled with terror. Then, the screen goes black. The intercom crackles to life. Static fills the room, followed by a distorted voice. "You shouldn't have looked," it says, the words stretched and broken. It's not Merrick. It's not anyone I know. The voice changes, morphing into something that sounds like me. "You shouldn't have come here." The door behind me creaks open. I don't remember running. I don't remember how I made it to the emergency hatch that leads outside. All I know is that I'm out now, stumbling through the snow and ice, the freezing air biting at my lungs. The observatory looms behind me, its silhouette stark against the night sky. The stars above are wrong, twisting and shifting into shapes that make my stomach churn. They're watching me. I reach my car, fumbling with the keys as I glance back at the observatory one last time. In the highest window, I see it, the figure, standing there, its blank face turned toward me. And then it raises a hand, as if waving goodbye. I don't look back again. I start the car and drive, the tires skidding on the icy road as I put as much distance between me and that place as possible. I don't know where I'm going, but anywhere is better than here. It's been a week since I escaped. I haven't slept. I haven't eaten. Every time I close my eyes, I see it. I hear the whispers, the growls, the static. I feel the weight of its gaze, like it's still watching me, even now. I should have followed the rules. I should have listened. If you ever find yourself at Eclipse Ridge Observatory, don't go. And if you do, for the love of God, follow the rules.